A free select DeWalt, Craftsman, or Cobalt tool with purchase of a select battery kit. Plus, get a free Werner 2-foot aluminum ladder when you buy an 8-foot fiberglass ladder. Shop these deals and more this Father's Day at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 6/15 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
We're the Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, audio and video streaming at wgnsradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Good morning. Welcome into another Wednesday edition of the Roundtable on WGNS. Chip Walters with you from Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates, and the Blue Raider Network. Glad to have you with us on this Wednesday morning again, and really a special guest today. I want to welcome in Father Seth Reed of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church here in town, and in addition to his... Good morning. Welcome into another Wednesday edition of the Roundtable on WGNS. Chip Walters with you from Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates, and the Blue Raider Network. Glad to have you with us on this Wednesday morning again, and really a special guest today. I want to welcome in Father Seth Reed of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church here in town, and in addition to his duties within the parish, he is also the chaplain at MTSU, and so he carries a lot of different roles, and they're very happy that he was able to carve out some time to do an interview with us today. Father, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Weather's a little hot and humid, but that's Tennessee for you.
Around here, it's just wait 15 minutes. As we record this, it's hot, but in the forecast there's storms, so who knows? And as this show airs, we'll have spring fling going on in town and about 4,000 high school kids. But today we're going to be talking about St. Rose. We're going to be talking about the Catholic Church and all that has been going on. And I kind of want to preface all of that with a little bit of information about you, Father, because I want to hear about you, your background, and also to kind of let people right off the bat know what there are three priests at St. Rose, and how that works with three priests, the deacons, and as well as the school, which we'll go into a little bit later.
Okay. First, I'll just kind of give a little bit of my background. I am originally from Nashville. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years and then transitioned into public school because of a learning disability. And after I graduated from Pearl Cone, I went to work with my dad. And I did that for about 10 years. We did lighting for music videos, TV shows, and commercials throughout Nashville, and sometimes would go up out of state, just depending on where the job was. And then about 10 years of that, I'd originally felt a calling in high school, but ignored it because I didn't want to go to school anymore. And then the calling came back when I kind of got back into my faith, and then decided I couldn't kind of keep running from God because he always wins. I decided to finally kind of go to seminary, and I was ordained this past May 25th in 2020. What year are we in?
We're in 2025 now, so 2024.
Yeah.
So you're a brand new priest.
Yeah, I'm coming up in 1 year.
For all intents and purposes. And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I will be 27 July 21st. So
okay, so there you go. That all work. Your timeline works out. You're talking about being out in working a regular job for 10 years, mm-hmm. and then getting into seminary. Tell me about you. You mentioned you had a calling in high school, and you ignored it. Tell me what that was like.
Okay, so I was kind of reading the Bible. I just decided, well, I had a friend in high school, and he said, "Hey, man, you should read the book of Revelation." And I was like, okay. And so I started reading through the book of Revelation, and it was really different than anything I'd ever read before. I mean, I've been going to mass and all this stuff with my family, but this was the first time that I really kind of decided to do something of my own with my own faith. So I read through the book of Revelation. I was like, okay, I really like this. This is kind of cool. So I started to read through the entire Bible. I went from Genesis all the way back to Revelation.
Wow.
And when I got to the Gospels, there was something different about Christ and his message and just everything about him. And in particular, it was the story of the rich young man, where the rich young man comes to Jesus and he says, what do I need to do to be perfect? And Jesus says, well, follow the commandments. And he goes, I do that. And then Jesus goes, well, sell everything and then come follow me. And that really struck a chord with me. And it was just like, I knew that God was calling me to do something. I could feel it in my heart, but I didn't really know what it was. Because at that time, I didn't want to be a Catholic priest because I wanted to get married.
Right. So, I mean, up until that point, you were, I guess once you kind of pushed that away for the time being, you were out with your buddies,
Yes.
going on dates,
Living in the
all of
world,
that,
yeah.
and like just like everybody else.
Exactly. Yep.
And that the sacrifice that comes with that is part of the suffering that comes along with being a priest, and all of that. But you pushed it away once, but it came back into your life. And tell me how that happened.
So within the church, there's 7 sacraments, and the sacraments of initiation are baptism, first communion, reconciliation, and confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been confirmed because I stopped going to religious education. And so when I started going back to Mass 10 years after that fact, I kind of started regularly receiving the sacraments. And I kind of said to myself, I want to get confirmed because I was never confirmed. And I went through the process of what is now called OCIA, Order of Christian Initiation of Adults. And I went through that process. And during that process, with kind of going to Mass regularly, going to confession regularly, receiving Jesus regularly, it kind of all came back again. And I started reading the Bible. And when I got to that same passage of the rich young man, it was just like that. It's like, okay,
wow,
here it is.
Wow, that's amazing. And the a lot of people know what communion is and baptism. One of the things within the Catholic Church that I think is a little mysterious to people who are non-Catholic is confirmation. And kind of explain to folks kind of what that is.
Okay, yeah. So in baptism, what we believe and what pretty much every Christian believes is that you are adopted as the Father's sons and daughters. In our understanding of confirmation, what is happening is you've received the Holy Spirit at baptism, but in confirmation, you receive the fullness of the graces of the Holy Spirit. So you kind of receive the grace to go forth and preach without fear. You receive the grace to kind of proclaim Christ even in the face of opposition. You can do that with just baptism, but confirmation strengthens you and gives you kind of the strength and the grace to go forth and truly go out and proclaim without any fear or hesitation.
Yeah. And
as long as you're working with God's grace.
Right. Exactly. And at that point, you got back in, and you were confirmed and had the calling to go into the priesthood. So when you sat down with your friends and family at that point and said, okay, I'm going to make a big change in my life, how did that go?
My mom and dad kind of weren't too surprised because I had talked about this in high school, wanting to do something. I just didn't know what. My brothers, I have 2 older brothers, they were a little bit more hesitant. They kind of fought me on it a little bit and said, do you really want to do this? Are you sure this is what you want to do? And they kept kind of asking me that question over and over again. And finally, I was just like, yes, this is what I want to do. And I know it's what God wants me to do. And friends were kind of the same thing because they're kind of like my brothers, They weren't kind of true into their faith.
Right. And the thing is, if they were true friends and once you sat down and explained it to them, they were going to be supportive anyway.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And they were.
Yeah. And so you went to seminary, and to talk about that, was it is going to seminary a similar experience as going to college?
It is a little similar, yes. So I didn't have any college, so I had to do 8 years. Most guys, if they don't have college, they do 8 years. If you have a degree, a bachelor's degree, you do about 6 years. But it's basically you're taking classes So I had about 15 hours every semester. There were a couple semesters where I had 18 hours just because you had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the structure is kind of military in a way. You wake up at a certain point, you go do morning prayer, and then you go to class for like 3 hours, and then lunch, and then mass, then back to class for another 3 hours, then evening prayer, then dinner, then night prayer, and then the rest of the evening at like 7 until 11 o'clock at night is yours to kind of study, pray, or go out to Wendy's and get a cheeseburger because you don't like what you ate at dinner. But yeah,
Well,
it's very similar in the class structure.
yeah, and well, and the other thing too is you learned time management very quickly.
Yes, you
Uh,
have to.
that is that is the non-religious part of it, is just to keep up.
Yes,
You've got to learn how to, and if you're not a morning person, you learn to be one,
exactly.
and all of that. What was and you mentioned that as a child you had a learning disorder. Did that affect you at all as you went through seminary and learning what you had to learn there?
I was worried that it was going to, but once I kind of started taking classes, I noticed it in certain aspects. But a lot of the time, if I could just go one-on-one with a teacher or with another friend of mine, another seminarian, and kind of talk with them about it, that helped a lot more than kind of just trying to figure it out on my own.
Father Seth Reed is our guest today, and your seminary experience. Where did you go to seminary?
For college seminary, I went to St. Joseph's in Covington, Louisiana. And for theology, I went to St. Meinrad in southern Indiana.
Yeah, that's okay. And it's been really interesting that during, and we're going to go into the next segment. We're really going to go deeper into the new pope and the
Mhm.
transition that's been. But one of the things that came out about Pope Leo of the 14th is he was a math major at Villanova, and
Yeah.
so it just goes to show you that priests can come from all walks of life, and and you use whatever talents God has given you to direct you into what area of the priesthood you're going to go in.
Mhm.
Yep. So when you were in seminary and you're getting close and it's going, okay, I've got to figure out how I'm going to use this. Am I going to be a parish priest? Am I going to be, whatever?
Right. Yeah.
What were the options that were out there for you at the time?
So that kind of what really happens is that as you get closer to ordination and being a priest, you start to have conversations kind of with the vocation director, the bishop, and then maybe a couple other priests, the vicar general, for example. And they will kind of ask you, where do you see yourself? Would you like to be at a big parish? Would you like to would be at a small parish? Do you think you would like to be at a school? And then you kind of tell them. And then what happens practically is the bishop kind of talks with some other priests in the diocese, and then they kind of decide where they think that person is going to be the best fit. And so for me, it was they thought I would be the best fit here at St. Rose, and also as chaplain for the college students at MTSU, the Catholic college students.
Yeah, and
And you have a little bit of a say so, but in reality, the bishop ultimately decides for you.
right, right, and it makes a lot of. I mean, and obviously in your situation, they looked, okay. Here's a mid-state guy who
Yeah.
grew up in Nashville, who obviously knows a lot about the mid-state area. MTSU probably went to high school with a ton of kids who went to school here, and said this is going to be a perfect landing spot for him. And so now you've been doing it for a year, working with Father Chris and with Father Alejandro. How has year one been as opposed to what your expectations were?
I didn't really have any expectations. It was more so a matter of, okay, I'm going to go to St. Rose. I know that's a big parish. I'm going to be a chaplain. And for MTSU, and I'd never done any type of college ministry before. So it was really kind of the first 6 months was figuring out how to just be a diocesan priest. And the last 6 months has been basically just figuring out how to be a chaplain to my university students.
First Shot, growing in Christ with life and athletic skills.
So we teach God's Word at everything we do to implant it in them so that they understand that the only way to get through the world is with God on their side.
First Shot founder and executive director Andy Herzer.
Our focus is on our inner city here at Patterson Park.
From academics to athletics, First Shot's focus is toward building a stronger, more courageous spirit to face opportunities and obstacles that our youth confront every day. To find out more about First Shot, go to firstshottn.org.
When it comes to your home, memories and sentimental value are priceless. Farrah Construction can remodel your home or can update your kitchen, bath, or other rooms. I'm Ron Hall. If you can dream it, Farrah Construction can turn it into reality. Call Farrah Construction at 615-893-6120. That's Farrah Construction. I'm Ron Hall. Shop local. Let our family business help you. Farrah Construction Company.
Where is the best barbecue in town? At 1920 East Main. The best barbecue for miles around is in 1920 East Main. You can buy it by the pound, sandwich, platter, or plate. No matter what you choose, it will taste great. You can come with a friend, by yourself, or with a date. Just Lick Pig Barbecue. Barbecue pork, beef, or chicken, Brunswick stew, great sides, lunch specials, down-home atmosphere, and they cater. Slick Pig Barbecue, it's the best.
Hi, this is Trevor from Bell Jewelers. Last year we had an amazing year with Longines and Seiko, our watch brands. The Longines came out with the Spirit Zulu, Hydro Conquest GMT, and the 39mm Legend Diver that has been selling off the shelves. Come into Bell Jewelers so I can find the watch just for you. Personally, I have the Spirit Zulu and the 39mm Legend Diver, and great watches. Bell Jewelers, 821 Northwest Broad Street, across from Toots.
Hi, I'm Larry Castelli, and I love living at Adams Place. I do exercise. I go 3 times a week. I go to stretch and balance, always conscious of your needs. It's not that someone is telling you what to do, it's they're looking out for you. It's a good workout.
And what about the food?
Oh, give me a break. There's so much food here. I would highly recommend Adams Place.
Rutherford weather.
Partial sunshine develops this afternoon with a high in the upper 80s. Tonight, partly cloudy skies develop low near 65. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki on News Radio WGNS.
Currently, it's 65.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. MTE's EV Ready program provides members with $50 in bill credits toward the installation of wiring to support 240-volt charging in their garages. Learn more at driveev.com.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
Welcome back into the Roundtable here on WGNS. Father Seth Reed joins us. He is part of the clergy staff at St. Rose. He is as we mentioned, 1 year into his priesthood, and also the chaplain for MTSU Catholic students. Let's kind of dive into in this segment what the Catholic Church in the world has gone through over the last month. And I was writing some notes down for our conversation today, and the first note I had: a time of mourning and a time of joy. And sometimes we always hear about good Catholic guilt, but there's a little bit of guilt in my joy for Pope Leo, because of the other side of me wants to mourn the passing of Pope Francis. Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and talk a bit about that.
I think what we have to keep in mind is that although Pope Francis has passed, just like with anybody, they still are alive in Christ. And we have to kind of keep that reality in our mind, because if we are believing Christians, then we believe that even though somebody may have passed away, they are with Christ. And that's what we have to hope and pray for, is that they're with him. And so our mourning has to kind of change from the old kind of pagan Greek understanding of once somebody's dead, they're dead and they're in Hades or they're kind of somewhere else, into although a person has passed, they are still alive and they are with Christ now, and they're happier than they ever were before. And I think it's kind of it's the realization of the crucifixion and then the resurrection. The apostles mourned, but as soon as Christ rose from the dead, they all began to celebrate and have that Easter joy.
Yeah. Well, and and so many of us, when we lose a relative, a lot of times the sadness is for our own, is for ourselves. We should be, in more and more these days, we hear about celebrations of life and where the end of life is somewhat uplifting. Now, for Pope Francis, obviously, he led an incredible life, and pretty ironic the circumstances of when he passed. Mere hours after the vice president had been there on a visit. But as you reflect on his papacy, that really kind of fell in line with when you had your calling, and also during your years in seminary and first year as a priest. Do you think his personality, his way of doing things, was that did it have any effect on you, and either making your decision, or once you had chosen to go into the priesthood, it affirmed it as you watched how he handled himself in the Vatican?
Yeah, his papacy didn't really have anything to do with me kind of going into the priesthood. But once I was in seminary, we were obviously being formed under kind of Francis's leadership, and his kind of motto of "you must smell like the sheep." That was kind of hammered home by our formators, our priests who were in charge of us, pretty much on a regular basis. Is the biggest thing that you can do is go and be with the people, and be wherever they are, with the rich, with the poor, with the middle class. It doesn't matter. Go and be with the people and smell like the sheep, because that's what Pope Francis is doing, and we must follow the example of our Pope, our shepherd. And so that was a really big kind of place of formation for a lot of the guys kind of the past couple of years under Francis's papacy, is smell like the sheep.
Yeah.
Go
Wow.
be with the people.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, and he was, I think everybody looked at him as kind of a grandfather or the great uncle, that kind of thing. Have you seen the movie Two Popes?
I have, yes, actually, yeah.
I think that's a terrific movie, and really shows the differences between Pope Benedict and Pope Francis, but also it comes full circle and showed the commonalities that they had when you got right down to the crux of things, that they both had the same goals in mind.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with pretty much every bishop and priest and pope, is that you always have somebody who's going to be a heavy theologian, and then you have somebody who's going to focus more on the pastoral side. But both are theologians and both are ultimately pastoral. It's just which one is brought out more.
Yeah. Well, with what I do at MTSU with the football and men's basketball team, I'm around athletics a lot, and sometimes wherever it may be, whenever there's a coaching change, that a lot of times the next person in line is someone who brings a different set of skills to the job. Exactly. And when you go back and you look at, I go back to Pope Paul, who was installed just a few months after I was born, but his long papacy, and then Pope John Paul I, a very short papacy, and John Paul II, and each one of those had a very, very unique personality about them. And in particular, once I got to an age of where I was paying more attention, especially because I think Pope John Paul II really energized, was the first to really, in my lifetime, to energize young people around the world. Because he became a rock star.
Yeah. And Pope St. John Paul II, I think he was able to kind of bridge the gap between both being a theologian and pastoral. He was able to balance those so well.
Exactly, and he balanced it well. And I think when you look at, okay, Pope Francis, he came from being in from all he did in Argentina, and definitely a man of the people.
Mhm.
And then here you come back to Pope Leo, who has a very a very structured administrative background. He's a structured guy if he was a math major at Villanova. But again, it's a different skill set. But he also has the pastoral background with all he has done with missionaries in Peru.
Mhm. And he's also got the leadership capabilities too from his time being the head of the Augustinian order. So I think, I mean, it's really too early to tell with his papacy, but I think we may have the makings of somebody who can balance that world of being a theologian, but also heavy in the pastoral side again.
Yeah. You mentioned his Augustinian background. And I think for Catholics, we understand a little bit because Pope Francis, we heard he was a Jesuit, Jesuit priest. Pope Francis comes in after an Augustinian background. Talk a little bit about uh, priests who choose to be in an order and what that means and it, how where does that lead them, because it doesn't lead them away from the church by any stretch. Is it more like if okay, now you're a doctor, but are you going to be a brain surgeon? Is it more of a specialized area of the priesthood when you choose to go into an order?
It's not necessarily more specialized. It's more so what the man feels called to. So you can have, say, a member of a Benedictine order who is just a lay brother and not a priest. So it could be that the man feels a very special calling to a particular type of religious life. So Dominicans are teachers. Benedictines are kind of, they live in their monastery and they cultivate culture. The Jesuits are teachers and they're missionaries. And so if a man feels a particular calling, or even a woman, because they can join religious orders too, if a person feels a particular calling to say maybe be a teacher or to perhaps be a missionary, there are certain orders that have certain charisms that will kind of be what they maybe want to do. And so if a man decides, I really want to be a missionary priest, he might go join the Jesuits. Or if a man decides, I would really just like to be kind of a lay brother and just teach, then he might go be a Dominican. It kind of really depends on what he feels Christ is calling him to do. Whereas for a diocesan, you stay kind of within your diocesan boundaries. So for me, it's the Diocese of Nashville, Middle Tennessee. So I will always be somewhere in Middle Tennessee. But a Jesuit, an Augustinian, a Dominican, they could be somewhere kind of in the United States, or they could be sent to Peru or Japan or wherever it is that their superior decides to send them.
Yeah. Now with Pope Leo being an Augustinian, what are the characteristics of an Augustinian that set them apart from others?
I have to think about that for a second.
I mean, because his organizational skills. When as far as Jesuits, you mentioned them being more missionary. Rich, what characteristics of Augustinians lead them down that path?
I think it's really just kind of following St. Augustine himself and his rule that he wrote,
Okay.
kind of the life of St. Augustine, kind of giving yourself completely to Christ and doing whatever it is he's calling you to do. Because with their order, it's very big, at least his rule is very big on kind of living that discipleship in a community and then bringing that love of Christ from the community out into the people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense there, because you mentioned Pope Francis being a Jesuit. Smell like the sheep. That is the missionary mantra that comes there. As this conclave of cardinals began, did you and Father Chris and Father Alejandro sit around over at St. Rose and put odds on who some names might be? Because we all around the world have an interest in what was going on there. But did you all have any insight whatsoever of how that might go down?
We had no insight in who would be picked, but we all kind of talked about it. I remember going into the church office and kind of jokingly saying, "Do we want to take bets? Let's all pick a cardinal and throw in $5."
So
yeah,
who would have? Okay, that being said, who would have been in Father Seth's? Who would have been on your draft board?
I thought it was either going to be Cardinal, and I'm going to butcher his name, but the Cardinal from the Philippines, Cardinal Tolga, I believe that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Or Cardinal Sarah. Those were the two that I thought may have gotten it.
Gotcha.
Or an Italian.
Yeah, but it was interesting to me because I thought, there had been an Italian Pope for over 500 years, and all of a sudden you have John Paul II, who was from Poland. You had Pope Benedict, who was from Germany, and then an Argentinian. You're just thinking,
it's got to go back to Italy.
The Italian popes they're gonna block vote here, and whether it was going to be Pizzaballa or whomever, that you felt like there was going to be a good chance that it was going to go back to an Italian pope.
Yeah, I thought if it wasn't going to be one of those two, it was definitely going to be an Italian again.
Yeah,
because it's just been so long without an Italian pope.
Yep, but instead we got the surprise of all surprises: an American-born pope, Robert Prevost, born in Chicago, educated in Catholic schools in Chicago, a math major at Villanova, and a dual citizen of the United States and Peru. And I've heard different accounts of what some of the pundits have said, and part of it was he was the least American of the American cardinals, but he was certainly a man of the world. But his total background, whether it's in administration, his pastoral background, it seems as if you could build a perfect candidate, he would certainly be it.
Yeah, it would seem that way. And I mean, from my perspective, he came out of nowhere. I had never even heard his name before. And so when I heard it and I started Googling him and looking him up, I was like, okay, this guy seems pretty good. And this definitely has to be the Holy Spirit picking him, because, I mean, nobody had heard of him. I mean, even Cardinal Dolan and some of the other American cardinals are we've never even really talked to him that much.
Yeah, well, and obviously, I think Cardinal Dolan is probably the mouthpiece of Catholicism in America, and does it very well. He's very, very well spoken, and I heard some of the same interviews I'm sure that you did, and he he said it was early on, it was a surprise. He said, but the groundswell for Cardinal Prevost, it grew very, very quickly, and I think he put a lot of that on that the Cardinals were brought in several days earlier than the conclave actually began, which gave, because there's so many new Cardinals, what was it, 80% of the voting Cardinals became Cardinals under Pope Francis, that they, there are so many that needed to learn about each other, and he felt that opportunity in those 2 or 3 days before they went behind closed doors, may have given at the time Cardinal Prevost a big advantage when people actually got to sit down and meet and know him in a social situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's very true. I mean, it gave them the time and the opportunity to really. I mean, how well can you get to know a guy in 3 days? But to at least talk and kind of come to a common understanding of each other a little bit. Like, okay, this may be a guy who could probably lead the church in a good way.
Yeah. What do you feel like moving forward? Well, first of all, before I get to that, I've seen so many. Whether it's Instagram, TikTok videos, Facebook videos of people around the world as they were watching when the smoke came out of the Sistine Chapel, and everybody in the world now knows what Habemus Papam means, and so they were glued to their televisions when the name was read. Tell me where you and Father Chris and Father Alejandro were when you found out, and how you found out.
So my office is a little bit separate from them, so I'm not sure what they were doing. But I was in my office working on something. I think it was something for the university students. And I got a text message from Sister Catherine Murray, the principal, and she said, "Oh, the white smoke has just come out. We're gonna gather the entire school into the gym if you want to come." And so I was like, "Yeah." So I kind of went over there and waited in the gym, and all the 8th graders are there, and the 6th graders and 7th graders, and then eventually all the younger kids start to filter in, and we're all kind of standing there waiting for it to finally be announced. And then when it finally happens, it was just kind of really amazing to see the kids' reactions. I mean, of course, once they realized he was from America, they all started chanting USA, USA. It was pretty funny. But then once it's announced, everybody's like, "Who is this guy?" And so we're all Googling him and seeing what his past record is and stuff. So it was pretty exciting.
Well, and there have been more. I mean, you think back the Bear fans on Saturday Night Live. They've done skits with him in there. The Chicago White Sox have put out a jersey with his name and number 14 on it. So I think one of the things that's really interesting. He was asked this week, do you foresee yourself making a trip to the U.S. and in particular Chicago in the near future? And he said he did not see that happening right off the bat. Does that surprise you at all?
I was actually listening to a podcast by a guy named Jimmy Akin. He's the senior apologist at CatholicAnswers.com. And his video was basically kind of explaining what he thought Pope Leo was going to do. And Jimmy Akin made a very good point that Pope Francis has already got so many meetings in place, and Pope Leo is probably going to take those meetings. And so I think he's supposed to go to Greece and go to Nicaea, where the first council was held, because Pope Francis was going to do that. So Leo is just going to kind of pick up where Francis left off and probably just keep those meetings and those visitations. So Leo will eventually come to the United States. It's just a matter of when in that schedule he's going to be able to fit it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. The interviews with his brothers have been a hoot.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those yet, but I've heard a lot of funny stories.
Well, he's got the one that looks almost like a twin of his that I think has been a principal of Catholic high school, and his other brother who lives in Florida works in the tech field. But they've both been, they talked about growing up how they were out playing cowboys and Indians and throwing footballs, and that their brother, now Pope Leo, he would play being a priest and would set up an ironing board as an altar and was get the stale bread out and have communion. So they knew he was on a path for this for quite a long time. Father Seth Reed is our guest today on the Roundtable here on WGNS. We'll take a time out and kind of dig into his work. His specialization is he is the chaplain for MTSU Catholic students. That's coming up next right here on the Roundtable on WGNS.
Premier 6 Theater on Broad in Jackson Heights.
Let's all go to the movies.
Check out what's showing at murfreesboromovies.com. Popcorn popped fresh daily.
Movies at the good old
Premier 6 on Broad in Jackson Heights.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has plans built just for you. 2 lines of unlimited for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings compared to Verizon and AT&T. But don't just take our word for it.
It's not just the savings that are great with our T-Mobile plan. There's all this value from all these other things that T-Mobile offers. T-Mobile has been such a savings for us.
We love it. Switch today and get 2 free 5G phones like the Motorola Edge with Turbo Power charging that gives you power for the day in just 15 minutes. And customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Go to T-Mobile.com/55 to learn more. With 24 monthly bill credits and 2 new lines with autopay for well-qualified customers plus taxes, fees, and $35 per line connection charge. Credits end and balance due if you pay off early or cancel. Contact us plus $5 per line without autopay. Debit or bank account required. 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. See details at T-Mobile.com. Motorola Edge requires 68-watt charger. Charger sold separately. Actual performance will vary based on usage and configuration.
This is Pastor Nikki Ajapong, lead pastor of Holy Hill Chapel in Murfreesboro.
Here are sermons on WGNS every Sunday night at 7:30.
Extending the love of God.
Reviving the community at Holy Hill Chapel, TN.org.
Good Neighbor Events is brought to you by America Pest Control, Old National Bank, and the law offices of John Day.
This is a paid legal ad.
Hi, this is John Day of the Law Offices of John Day. For more than 30 years, my team and I have worked hard to help injured people throughout Middle Tennessee. Over that time, we've helped thousands of people get the legal help they need when they've needed it the most. And if we're not able to help or aren't the right lawyer for you, we'll do the best to point you in the right direction. If you've been injured, call the law offices of John Day for a free consultation. And remember, there's no fee unless we win your case.
Let's check those WGNS Good Neighbor events. Maybe you're new to town and want to learn more about the community. Come on over to the one-room Ransom Schoolhouse this Saturday morning from 9 until noon, and a discussion with friends from the Rutherford County Historical Society. They'll even include coffee and donuts. Saturday, 9 until noon at the old Ransom Schoolhouse, 717 North Academy Street. Here's another major event to put on your calendar. The 71st Blackman Barbecue returns to the Lane Agri-Park, Friday, June 27th, 5:30 until 8:30 in the evening. That's the Blackman Barbecue at the Lane Agri-Park. That is a must-attend event. And the Red Cross is still critically low on blood. Phone 800 Red Cross and make an appointment to give blood at a time that fits your schedule. And this is the 78th year for Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department's free Movies Under the Stars. Free movies every Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evening at dark. Check the events page on our website for the exact locations. Those are WGNS Good Neighbor events.
This is Chip Walters, and I'm honored to be your 2024 MTAR Realtor of the Year. I'm with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates, and like many of you, I've seen the real estate market shift and change. People often ask, Chip, what's really going on? Well, that's a great question, and I believe in answering with solid, factual data. So let's cut through some of the noise. I invite you to reach out. Let's have a conversation about your real estate goals and the current market trends in your neighborhood. You can find all my contact information at choosechip.net.
Next up to the plate is 20 grand. 75 grand is on deck, and 200 grand is waiting in the hole. And if any of those guys make it on base, hold on to your peanuts, because 500 grand is ready to bring them all home. I'm not sure there's a better lineup in the league.
Instant games from the Tennessee Lottery are guaranteed to be a big hit this summer. Play today for your crack at a whole lot of cash. The Tennessee Lottery, game-changing fun. Please play responsibly.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
Welcome into the Roundtable. Chip Walters here with you, and glad to have Father Seth Reed from St. Rose Catholic Church here in Murfreesboro with us, because wanted to talk a little bit about St. Rose, also all of the news that has come out of Rome and over the last month with the death of Pope Francis and the election of Pope Leo. I will tell you, Seth, that in August of 2023, I had the opportunity to go with the MTSU men's basketball team to on a tour of Italy, and our first stop was Rome, and we were very fortunate that we had the full-blown tour of the Vatican Museum, and that ended up in St. Peter's Square and going through the Basilica, and it was an experience of a lifetime to go through there, and for in my role to watch these 18 to 22-year-old guys go through there and watch them how they took notice of things, and most of them or all of them had not grown up Catholic, but they certainly showed just an amazing amount of respect for what was there and seemed to just try to soak it all in, which was really cool. And I will say this, and I posted this on Facebook, that going there and seeing and standing there in St. Peter's Square, walking up the steps of the Basilica and seeing, the different, things within inside, it really changed my perspective and brought this whole bigger story that we've watched over the last month into a much more personal meaning to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think getting to go to Rome is always kind of a great experience, whether you're Catholic or not, and kind of seeing the history of the early Christians and experiencing it. But it's also good because when something like this does happen, it kind of lets you experience it in a different way. It's like, oh, I've been there. I know what's happening. I've been to the Sistine Chapel. I know exactly where they're going to be. I know exactly what room they're in. It brings it all kind of it makes it all more real in a way.
You're exactly right, and that was going to be my way to explain it. So anyway, we're going to transition from that here in our final segment. In your role as chaplain for Catholic students at MTSU, talk a little bit about what that means and how that role plays out with students on campus.
Yeah. So in every other diocese, well, not every other diocese, in a lot of other dioceses, we have what's called a Newman Center, which is where the Catholic students will gather. In the Diocese of Nashville, our kind of Newman Centers they're under the umbrella of University Catholic. And so we have University Catholic at Vanderbilt and Belmont, at Tennessee Tech, here at MTSU, and at several other colleges. But those three campuses are kind of the big main ones. They have chaplains as priests. So Father Bolster is at Vanderbilt and Belmont, Father Gervon is at Tennessee Tech, and I'm at MTSU. And so basically our mission, so to speak, is to propose Jesus Christ. And so, as I said at the very beginning of the show, I had never done any type of college ministry. So it was kind of trial by fire. And so this first year has just kind of been me trying to really figure it out what it is I need to do to kind of help the students reach Christ. And so I've gone on campus a couple of times. If you've seen a weird guy wearing a black dress, that's me. And then I have, we do stuff here at the University House, St. Martin de Porres. It's right behind St. Rose on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and then we have a Sunday supper after Mass. And me and my campus minister, Ross's job is just really kind of to be here, ministry of presence, and to offer spiritual direction, confession times, and just somebody to talk to if they need somebody to talk to. Because being in college is hard. I mean, if you have the death of a loved one or if you're stressing over exams, it sometimes it's just hard and you just need somebody just to vent to. And a lot of my work is just kind of letting them vent to me and offering kind of a different perspective from a faith-based understanding to kind of help them see, it does suck sometimes. It is hard, but Christ is with you. And if you can rely on him and you can rely on your brothers and sisters, you can make it through whatever is going to happen.
Yeah. How active? Because when I was in school, it was the Newman Center, and when did that name change?
University Catholic has been around the Diocese of Nashville for around 20 years, but that was primarily at Vanderbilt and then slowly expanded into Belmont. I think it was been probably within the past 5 years that we have expanded across the entire diocese.
Gotcha. And you all, there's a special mass for college students on Sunday afternoon at 5:00. Is that at St. Rose, or is that
at St. Rose? Yes, sir.
Okay, it's in the main the main sanctuary.
And then after that is a free meal.
So what's normally for supper on Sunday nights? Does it?
It varies. Well, me and my campus minister, Ross, we have kind of gone to the different ministries, the Knights of Columbus, the Ladies of Auxiliary, the different ladies groups, and have basically begged them to help provide meals. So it's really whatever it is they provide. We've had hamburgers, we've had pizza, we've had students sometimes cook brisket. It really just kind of depends on whatever it is they bring.
What would be your goal? You've been there a year now. You've gotten your feet wet. What would be, if you had a few bullet points you'd like to accomplish in the next couple of years as the chaplain at MTSU for MTSU Catholics? What would that be?
I would like to just have a bigger presence among the students, because being part-time both with St. Rose and MTSU as their chaplain, it's kind of hard to dedicate as much time as I want to both of them. And so it's really kind of a sacrifice. And so really for me, it would just be me being able to be even more present than I already am, but also doing a little bit more outreach on campus itself, and also providing the students with a better place to kind of come and relax and study or pray. Because we're trying to renovate our current student center, but it's just a matter of money and time and all that good stuff.
Yep, money and time. That's
Exactly.
that's it. Do you feel like? I mean, there's a lot of energy and a lot of public notice of what's going on in the Catholic Church due to the change of popes, and obviously there's a ton of positive energy within the United States about Pope Leo. Do you feel like that we're going to see a large coming back to the church across the United States, or and then again when you get down into your jurisdiction on campus to be more that the energy is going to continue to help there, bringing more students that are already Catholic into your being more active within within the University Catholics?
I think that is definitely a big possibility. But I mean, even before Pope Leo, before the death of Pope Francis and the election of Pope Leo, we had 50 people in OCIA this year. And then last semester, I went from having 20 regular students to this semester having 70 students.
Wow.
And so I think even without even if we hadn't had a change of popes, I think we're in a trajectory anyway, just to have more kind of people coming back to Christ, whether it's within the Catholic understanding or within maybe Presbyterian or Lutheran or whatever they may be. But yes, I think with the change of popes, we will definitely probably see some of those Catholics who don't regularly go to Mass and receive the sacraments starting to come back.
Yeah. Now, tell folks about Father Chris and Father Alejandro, and what they can expect if they have not been back to church in a while and decide to come to St. Rose for a Mass, because 7 a.m. every morning except Saturday, and you guys sleep in a little bit on Saturday. I think it's at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, but to give folks an idea of what the atmosphere is and for Mass at St. Rose.
Yeah, so we have, as you said, Mass every day at 7 a.m. except on Saturday. That's at 8. And then we have our kind of Sunday Masses starting on Saturday evening at 4:30. And then we have a Spanish Mass at 6:30. And then our Sunday Masses start at 7, and then at 8:30, and then at 11, and then at 3, which is in Spanish, and then again at 5. And Father Chris is Brazilian. He speaks multiple languages. He speaks Portuguese, he speaks Spanish, he speaks English. I think he speaks a little bit of French too. So he's multi faceted in his languages, but he's a little bit of a fiery preacher sometimes, and he likes to preach a lot. So if you come back, get ready to kind of just sit there for a little bit, which is okay.
The homilies are going to be, or he comes with some fire and brimstone, huh?
A little bit sometimes. It depends on the mood of how he is that day. But he is a very good pastor, and he is leading the St. Rose in a good direction. And Father Alejandro, he is of Hispanic descent. He serves our Spanish Masses and helps with our Hispanic community a lot. But he is also kind of, he's a little bit more, I guess, chill. And he His homilies a little bit shorter, a little bit more, I don't know, smells and bells is the words that I would use. A
Oh,
little bit more
okay.
chanting and things along that way.
Now, do you perform the mass at 5 o'clock with the MTSU students?
We kind of switch off every now. Since we've got 7 Sunday masses, we always kind
Gotcha.
of go back and forth. But primarily from August until basically now, I am the one doing the 5 p.m. mass.
Gotcha.
They sub in every now and then.
It's got to be fun as well to work in a parish that has a school. That with St. Rose School, that we've talked about energy a lot in this time. That brings a special energy to a parish.
It most definitely does. Yes, I often will just kind of walk down the halls and just say hello to the students, and they're always excited to see you. I'll go and eat lunch with the students sometimes. But yeah, I mean, it's a very good atmosphere. And I have a friend who I went to seminary with, and he's at a school too up in the Diocese of Evansville in Indiana. And I was talking to him one day, and he was just like, "Yeah, if you're ever having a bad day, just go to the kindergarten classroom or the first or second grade, and they will just kind of go crazy because they don't ever really get to experience it free. So it kind of, if you're having a bad day, it lifts you up a little bit, and then you kind of go back and doing what you need to do." But
Well,
I've taught a couple of classes too for religion. I believe it was 6th through 8th grade with Sister Gloria Christie, and that was a very good experience, getting to kind of be in there with the students and actually teach.
Well, that's awesome. Father Seth, thank you for taking time, and glad you're in our community. I want to tell people if you have any questions about mass times or just looking for somebody to reach out to, saintrose.org, and that is saint spelled out, SAINT, rose.org. Anything else you'd like to add here right at the end? Anything on your mind? Be prophetic here, Seth.
I think what I just want to probably end with is to remember that Christ loves you and that Christ is always reaching out to you. And sometimes you may pray and you may not hear him, but he is speaking to you. And it might be in the whisper of the wind, or it might be through just somebody telling you that they love you. And just remember that he is with you and that he loves you and that he always has his hand outstretched for you.
All right. That is a great way to wrap things up today. If you missed any of this, you can go to the podcast section of wgnsradio.com. A special thanks to Father Seth Reed of St. Rose Catholic Church for being here with us today. We'll have another edition coming up next week here on WGNS.